Hi, this is Anna Imagination with the Healing Garden, and welcome to Shifting Perspectives. Trust is confidence. It is absolutely confidence in yourself. It's confidence in others. It is knowing when someone is going to step up or when you are going to protect. It is absolute certainty that you will succeed. And when we manifest, we talk a lot about trusting the universe. Consistency is devotion. Consistency is focus. And if you have any doubt, it creates inconsistency. And it's the inconsistency that creates, that lacks results. So I'm not sure yet if it matters who you're consistent or what you're consistent to, so long as you're just consistent. Is it the consistency and the trust that it will deliver, or is it the who or the what that matters? I ask this because I see a lot of people who trust to a God and other people trust to a universe. But when you enter the 8 perspective, you question whether or not the universe is you, whether or not it's you doing the manifestation, whether it's you doing it all. And when you trust, it's actually you calling upon your own power that's causing it to do it. But because you're swaying and you're not consistent or you're not certain, it's the lack of certainty that causes the delay. So is it really the consistency or is it the trust? Is it the consistency or is it the trust that's doing it? Because if it's the trust, then it really doesn't matter. Well, if it's the trust, then it matters the who. But if it's the consistency, then it doesn't matter what. It just matters that you're consistent. So it's almost like you have to pick your God and commit, so to speak. This matters to me because I've been questioning trust in yourself versus trust in the universe. And that's really it. You versus the universe. It's been something that's been on my mind since day one. You have somebody who worships a God, and I watch them completely rip apart their own identity to make room for this God. I see people every time they succeed give praise to a God, and it completely undermines their own trust in themselves, which destroys the ego. Ayn Rand spoke so much about this topic, but they're consistently breaking down their own ego and they are consistently trusting. So I have seen prayers with manifestation work because what matters, I believe, is the consistency. But if you are praying to or devoting yourself to a universe, when in fact you are the universe and all of the energy pool is actually coming from within you, and it's not an outside source coming to you, which one do you pray to? Is it ultimately self-confidence? I believe it is. I believe it is ultimately self-confidence. And yes, I believe it is ultimately self-confidence and the consistency. And I believe it is that combination when you are consistent and when you are that reflective of turning inward and trusting yourself. Not trusting the universe to deliver it to you, but just trusting your own power that it will come to you via your own will. It's An interesting thing to explore. This is purely philosophical, by the way. This is 100% philosophy and examining the archetype and the interrelationship between an individual, the ego, and the universe and the supreme being. The archetype study in philosophy was one of my absolute favorite studies of all times. When you get into philosophy, you study the archetype, what it is, what makes up an archetype. An archetype is a god, it is the ideal end result. And a lot of what we do very much emanates the ideal. It's the thing that we aspire to become. And the Greeks spent a lot of time analyzing what qualities make up the ultimate archetype. Is there one archetype or are there multiple archetypes? And then the argument goes monotheism. I almost said monogamy. And the argument goes for monotheism, that when you have multiple gods, multiple archetypes, they in fact have weaknesses and faults within each one of those. So in order to have the ultimate archetype, you require a flawless, perfect being. But in order to get a flawless, perfect being in a polytheistic society, one could argue that by accumulating one's strength, they in fact form a new unit, a singularity, and that singularity is in fact without flaw, because when all the weaknesses and all the strengths combine, you have a perfect entity. I believe that the archetype, the one God, the one ultimate archetype, is an accumulation, and it is the mass of us all together working with all of our strengths combined to create a single unit. I believe that God is we working together in perfect unison. I believe that we are the Borg. One could argue that the Borg is God. Perhaps. There are a lot of people who take this stuff way too seriously. Really, way too seriously. It's because their truth is the only thing that they have to hold on to. Truth. And when you threaten their truth, when you threaten any truth that they might have developed, their entire system is built upon an invasive truth. So that when you threaten their one truth, their entire system will fall apart. And they have a lot riding on their one truth. It's why a person is so vehement about making sure everyone conforms to their one truth, is because everything is contingent upon their one truth. Which is why they don't allow for a change in perspective. It keeps coming back to consistency, doesn't it? Over and over again. It seems to be the theme in everything we do, consistency. But it's really difficult to be consistent when you have an invasive perspective inside of your mind constantly pulling you off course, a subconscious mind that self-sabotages. But if you can overcome the self-sabotage, if you can overcome the invasive perspective and focus and be consistent to the point of predictability. Now, one could argue that predictability makes one vulnerable, because if you're predictable, then a person could hurt you. It's something I noticed that we all go through when we're in an abusive situation, is we are accused of being predictable at some point, and we get so defensive. I'm not predictable. Because the moment you do become predictable, someone can plan, strike, and take you down. It's another defense to be so protective over our unpredictability. But unpredictability means inconsistency. There is security, there is strength, there is success in our relationship to consistency, being predictable. Being predictable is absolutely advantageous for all of us, and yet we avoid it. because of our trauma minds. It's one of the things that I see a lot when I study millionaires, when I study billionaires and wealth. They all say the same thing: focus, consistency. The difference between a successful business and not is consistency. Across the board, everything that I study about millionaires and wealth and making it in business is be consistent, be predictable, be consistent to the point of predictability. And we think that it's consistency in time frames, consistency in, because consistency builds trust, confidence that you're going to deliver, confidence that you're going to show up, confidence that you're going to be, that you're going to do. And we build up that trust based off of predictability and consistency, because we are assessing a person's character and determining on whether or not that person's character is matched up to our ethics, to what they say they're going to do. And the best way to determine that is through consistency, which is where millionaires and billionaires build their wealth, is off of that consistency and that predictability. It is not possible to become wealthy and secure when you have a mental illness. Poverty is very much a mental illness. And our entire subconscious minds are built up around making sure we stay poor, making sure we stay unpredictable and inconsistent. And it's survival mode. It's absolutely survival mode, scarcity. And then there is the inflexibility to change. But that's just it, is things change around us. Things always change around us. And you have to be able to adapt to that change. But you yourself have to be stable within that inconsistent change. That is solid. That is being anchored. That's truly when you get to optimum mental wealth. That's what happens to you. There's this point in your healing where you suddenly put down this massive pole of grounding and you suddenly feel stable. And you suddenly, it felt like you become a willow tree that bends and moves toward the wind, but you don't break because you are a willow tree. But too much trauma is you're too rigid against the change that hits you and you break. Or there's the person who's under trauma and they keep changing positions and chameleoning themselves to adapt just to keep themselves alive. And both ways, you want to be grounded, solid, and deep like a willow tree with the ability to flex against change. And it's that consistency. That way, as the storms come and as they go, you stay grounded and you stay rooted and you don't move, you don't change. And you learn how to bend and shape and move with the winds around you. That's healing. So it keeps coming back to trust in yourself, trust in others, reliability, confidence that a person will deliver. So is that power coming from you or is that power coming from the universe? I believe the power does come from within. I truly do believe that the power comes from within. And it's when we all come together and we unite that we have our greatest strength. Which is why when you get to a certain point of success, healing, you spend more time pulling each other up and out of the mud and helping each other along than competing, because competition is absolutely the breaking down of someone else's foundation so you can stand on someone's remnants, so you can put yourself further. And that is guaranteeing failure, because you will never achieve that point of the archetype, ultimate strength, by combining all of our strengths together as one. It's an acceptance that I will always have something to learn. I will always have a weakness, and I will always be lacking in other strengths. You know, that's really what a weakness is. Imagine it's not, I have all the strengths and then I've got these things that hold me back. It's not that at all. Imagine that there are 20 strengths and you can only access one strength at a time. So in order to access all of the other strengths, you have to find others and bond together and accumulate and pool together your resources so that you will have access to all 20 strengths. It's like stone soup. It's absolutely a lot like stone soup. You might have your carrots, but it's you lacking strawberries, you lacking onion, you lacking potatoes, you lacking cucumbers. Those are weaknesses because you lack. And it's not until you pool everyone together that you gain. So that when you compromise, when you pool with another person, when you couple up with somebody, when you bring them into yourself with a relationship and you're pooling together your resources, it's not that you have weaknesses and strengths. It's that the weaknesses that you have are no longer present because you share with somebody else, so that your weaknesses are their strengths. And suddenly when you are together, you have no weakness. But imagine doing that with everybody across the entire world. Oh, that's what I believe. That is very much what I believe. Yes, consistency. I believe it is absolute consistency that manifests. It is consistency that overcomes every obstacle. It is consistency. And when you have a subconscious mind that's pulling you in one direction and your identity is wanting to go in a different direction, steadfast, absolute steadfastness. If you love shit like this, subscribe to my YouTube channel. And if you want more shit like this, subscribe to my newsletter, my amphitheater down below, and receive my self-care regimen every day, reminding you how to nurture and take care of yourself. Thank you so much for joining me, and may the kindest of words always find you.